Hey, good morning. Terry here, and welcome to part 3 of my Gunstock War Club build video series. Now, in parts 1 and 2, I went through the pieces of wood needed to make it, how to go about getting the dimensional lumber, how it's laminated together. And then I cut out the basic shape and glued the pieces together. So today I'm going to be finishing the shape. Now, I'm going to be using a belt sander for most of this. You could use a wood rasp, a file, or even a sharp hatchet or knife if you want to. That would be the more traditional way to go about it. But this isn't really a traditional Gunstock war club. Kind of is, kind of isn't. Anyway, part 3 coming up. I'm going to finish out the shape and get it ready to put the finishing work on it. So one thing I wanted to mention about this, we're talking about tradition. Well, this is not a traditional club in that it's composed of multiple layers of wood laminated together with modern adhesive. And it's got carriage bolts for studs and a iron case hardened spike instead of a blade. The overall design and size shape of the club itself is actually traditional. I came up with this design and the dimensions based on multiple artifacts that I found over the internet in museums on display. Now, the thing about this Gunstock War Club is there is no a Gunstock War Club other than just this general shape. What you see in the actual artifacts is a wide variety. Most of them did have, not spikes, but blades. Some had nothing at all, no blades at all. Some even had as many as 3 blades. Also, when we get out into the Great Plains, you see that they're much shorter, even like a one-handed style, which makes it easier for carrying on a horseback out on the plains, right? And then when we go east of the Mississippi, we find that they start getting longer, larger, and heavier. Some were almost twice this big. This is actually taken, again, from several artifacts from the period in museums, and so the size, shape, dimensions are historically accurate. So anyway, part 3, finishing up the shape. Hope you enjoy it, and have a good day. So got all 3 pieces glued together, and you trim this up, but I got it worked down fairly good, got everything evened up. It's got a nice feel to it already. I did some shaping on the handle, as you can see. And you can start to see this bulge here. I've got to work this down more, but you can see it's starting to take some shape. Handle's starting to get rounded off. I got to flatten it down the sides a little more, but it's got pretty good grip to it. And now it's time to work on this section, which you could call the body if you want to, and then the blade. But before I start working on that, I wanted to do some work on the throwing spike. I wanted to get that marked and drilled out so I don't sand it down too much. And man, I thought and thought and thought, what the hell to do with that throwing spike? I thought about using a throwing knife. Well, you know, it makes sense. It would work. I thought about using drill bits, grinding down into a spike to a point. I thought about using a high strength steel bolt and grinding it down. I even thought about putting 2 on it, which I thought would look pretty cool. 2 spikes sticking back here. And then I remembered something. About a year ago, I was out wandering around back in the forest behind my house and came across this 1/2-inch iron bar that somebody had just hammered down into the ground. You can see where it's been in the dirt rusting, and just walked off and left it. Now, that forest back there during World War II was a military base. And you can still see some of the roads back in there. You can see some of the remains of earthworks, of guard houses, things like that, here and there, off and on. But even some chain link fence, the 8-foot tall stuff with barbed wire on the top, not this residential stuff. But there was nothing around to where I found this. There were no roads, no gatehouses, no fencing. I mean, nothing. Now, this thing was just sitting out there in the middle of the forest. Sometime in the past, somebody felt compelled to be out there in the forest with this iron bar and a hammer, hammer it down into the ground, and walk off and leave it. But there it was, about 3/4 of a century later, when I came along and found it. And I thought, this would be really cool for the throwing spike. That'd make a great spike. So all I got to do is put a tip on it. So I thought, well, I could grind it down. I could, and that would work. But it's a lot of time and effort grinding this 1/2-inch iron bar down. And besides, I wanted to put a little bit of style to it. I wanted to put a 4-sided pyramid type shape to the point. So then I thought, well, maybe I could forge it. Well, got a hammer and got a torch. Don't have an anvil. Don't even know if this torch will get hot enough. Some propane torches I've had in the past would heat a steel up to orangish hot, not soft enough to hammer on. Some won't. I've never tried this one. But I got a concrete driveway, which might work for an anvil. So let's set this up and try it out. So as it turns out, that torch simply would not get hot enough to get this steel up to where I could hammer it. So I ended up having to grind it anyway. And I was able to go ahead and get that 4-sided or obelisk shape that I wanted anyway. And it didn't take too much longer. So there that is. So now all I got to do is clean this part up, cut it off. With the basic shape of the throwing spike in, it's time to work on the general shape of the body of the club. And then you can already see, even though I've just started out, it's starting to take on that characteristic diamond-shaped cross section. So it's hot, taking my time, taking a lot of breaks, and this is going to take a while. Well, I'm almost finished with the shaping, the rough shaping on the belt sander. If you can see it or not, I got a ridge that I call this the spine. I've got a ridge running down the center here, tapering off in each end. I got to do it just a little bit more. I got the blade shaped out. Again, a little bit more finish work to do on the belt sander, and then I start hand sanding with rasp and sandpaper. Because this one is bigger than that other club I made, it's going to need a little more truing up of the lines and stuff, make sure everything's nice and straight. Got to spend just a little more time with it probably. So the last thing I'm going to do before I go to hand sanding though is I'm going to install the throwing spike. And this is it finished. Yeah, I elongated it a little bit more and got it cut off and cleaned up. And I'm going to drill the hole for it. It'll actually look something like that. I'm not going to install it today though, because I want to finish the sanding, but I do want to get the hole drilled so I have time to do something about it if I change my mind and decide to do something else instead. Probably won't, but just in case. So yeah, I'm going to get this drilled and then do just a little more finishing with the belt sander and then go to the hand finish. Got it drilled. This is just set in just to check the fit, and it's nice and straight and looking good. So I'll install this permanently later after I get the rest of it finished off. And yeah, it's going to look pretty good, I think. I think it's going to look all right. Going to work. Stick around for part 4, finishing the War Club.